Hello, and welcome back to the Wacky Wonderful Show. I'm here. I'm your host, Wyatt, and this is your host,
Joe. Hi.
back.
We're back.
We're back.
And we're glad to be here.
We are glad to be here.
We have a couple awesome segments this week.
I think it's going to be fun.
The past couple weeks since we started, this is just week 3. You've been pretty, we kind of collaborated on some of the topics that we've been coming up with. This one, you're like, I have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do it. I'm going to figure out how to work it. I'm going to communicate my inner thoughts.
Yes.
For something you got going on this week. And I'm not fully, unlike previous 2 weeks, I'm not fully sure what you're going to be talking about exactly.
I didn't make that clear enough? Okay.
Well, the thing is, I'm. It's not you didn't make it clear. It's that I'm interested to see where you're going with it.
Okay.
And I'm going to also be doing my normal thing. I'm going to be teaching people about film aspects while watching some of Harry Potter clips.
Very nice.
So introduce a little bit about what, I know you do it in your clip, but what exactly is kind of the concept of your segment?
We're going to be talking about the Chosen One.
Okay.
And more than just the Chosen One, we're going to be talking about like how to tell a Chosen One story.
Okay.
How to make a Chosen One story work.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a lot of Chosen One stories.
Yeah.
We've got a lot. You what's one off the top of your head?
Peter Pan. No, let's go with Frodo.
I don't know that I would consider Frodo a Chosen One story.
Batman. I'm bad at this.
Okay. I'm talking like there's a prophecy that says this person will defeat this person. You got one? No?
I mean, no.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head.
No, it's fine.
I'm on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's always on the spot when you can't
You're gonna
exactly
be bringing some. Though.
Yeah, I've got a couple that are in mind and some different examples. But I'm going to be sort of talking about how Harry Potter does the Chosen One story and how it works in the Harry Potter universe.
Yeah.
And what it looks like and how it's sort of related to other stories and how we can take inspiration from what they've already done.
Very good.
Going to be delving a little bit more, I think, this week into the books because the movies don't do the prophecy as much justice.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. Well, I'm looking forward to see what you have to say, man. I'm looking forward to learning, and I hope all of you that are watching, I hope you're looking forward to learning also.
Yeah.
I guess this is a concept using Harry Potter as the example.
Right.
So it's like when you're preaching a message about an application, but instead you're just choosing a portion of scripture to motivate.
Yeah.
Motivate it. So you're choosing the scripture of Harry Potter.
Jeez. Let's not put it like that. Oh my God.
It's not blasphemy.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm going to be talking about camera movements.
Okay.
And so I'm going into specifically 4 different kinds of movements, and we have examples, and I actually have an example of one that I noticed doing my research. There's a scene in Harry Potter that if we talk about last week, the 180-degree rule, we talk about motivated lighting 2 weeks ago, and shadow side and stuff. There's actually an example that messes up all of those, and and also they set up a camera track, like one of the movements I'll be explaining, like a dolly movement. I saw a picture, I'll show it to you, but they don't actually ever use it. It's a stagnant shot. But I have the behind the scenes production photo showing that it's there. They just didn't use it in the edit, I guess. And so we'll end it with that, have a little giggle, remind us that even the professionals still are figuring stuff out.
Well, you have an idea in mind, and then you set up what you think it's going to be, and then you get there and you're like, okay, wait, hold on.
Yeah, hold on.
We can do this like this, and it looks better.
Yeah. But the good thing about Harry Potter is that there's a handful of stagnant shots, But my goodness, if they didn't use sweeping and moving, and I mean, they're one of the most moving films one of them that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, it's like painting with movement.
Right.
And I'm going to get into some of these examples, and we'll look at a few clips.
It's going to be good. That's going to be fun.
You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So I'll start, and then you'll kick me out.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everyone, back to exploring filmmaking through the avenue of Harry Potter. Now, I've had a great time doing this. I've got excited. I've enjoyed the process of analyzing the filmmaking. A lot of times, even for someone who thinks this way, if I don't have a reason to, sometimes I turn it off and I don't ever really appreciate to the full extent what's been created for me. And so I think it's actually become a really good exercise for me to do this. If you're new here, you'll see that, I'll just let you know, I've done 2 weeks of this already, 2 other videos where we're talking about filmmaking tricks and tips and concepts and learning about them through the avenue of the Harry Potter films. And so we're going to be doing that again this week, and this week we're talking about camera movement. Now, right off the top, I'll tell you that the 3 movements we're going to be looking at is a jib movement, we're going to be looking at a dolly, a track, and a handheld / Steadicam movement. And I have a few clips from Harry Potter that we're going to look at. And I chose not to use audio this week because I want us to really focus in on what we're seeing visually without the distraction of audio. So we won't have any audio, and I'll be talking through it like commentary throughout. So let's go ahead and dive into the first little scene that we have here. It's kind of quick. Let's just watch it. And this one is for the Jib Shot. All right. So we got a nice little slow movement. Notice we're coming in, if you remember the 180-degree rule, we're coming in at a specific side. We can see where the line is, but it's a nice above, like the earth kind of movement. And it's still low to the earth, but it's almost like it doesn't have legs, or someone's actually just walking up on them. That's what it feels like. And here we go. We're actually still on the same side of the line. And it's just that slow little movement it could be stagnant here, but they chose not to. They chose to have a jib shot. And then we cut to a few stagnants. That's just on sticks on a tripod. And then it's actually kind of cool. We'll see a production picture here in just a minute, how they shot this. And then we have a little close-up. Yeah. And notice with the 180-degree rule, even though they're all looking the same direction, the spider would be signifying where the end of that is. So, as I said, it was a pretty quick clip. Let's go ahead and look at the production shot. And as you can see here, they have a jib. And if you don't know what a jib is, it's a camera crane. They have counterweights, and they're just moving it either by hand or electronically. This one is probably electronically because it is so big. And a lot of Hollywood films tend to use jibs because you can get them high up, and they have you can move them around. The diversity of their ability to get around the scene is pretty extensive. And so that's kind of why Hollywood uses them a lot. But you'll notice if you see a lot of productions, you'll see the camera crane, and they seem to always have that. This was a very simple example because it wasn't really high up. It was very low to the ground, but they kind of chose it to just make a very subtle movements, just very subtle changes in the scene, but not dramatically. It's almost like, I've said this before, Harry Potter is the films themselves, they're moving a lot. They have a few stagnant shots as we saw, but they move constantly. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a part of the art where you can craft a good story and not it look stagnant and boring a lot. And they tackle this very well, in this case, by using a jib shot. It's kind of cool. Outside of the camera movement, you see they had a blue wall, a blue screen. They were shooting outside, so they had that nice natural light. It's probably a cloudy day, so they had a nice soft light. And notice Hagrid's not there. which means because they had to make him bigger, they had to add him later. That's an interesting fact. But they actually built, I mean, that spider's not CG. That's actually practical effect. So it's pretty cool. That's a basic understanding of the jib shot. It's just a nice sweeping motion kind of thing. So it's pretty basic when we get down to it. Let's now go to another clip and yeah, let's just do it. Come on. So this is from the Deathly Hallows film. This is where they're running away, and we will actually see two examples from this clip for two different kinds of movements. Now this right here is a nice, I think it's also a jib moment. I don't have confirmation because I couldn't find a production shot, but I'm pretty sure this is probably a jib. They're having a little intimidating conversation. Now, once they move to running, this actually took a lot of time. Now, this is very Jason Bourne style. Things are moving a lot, and actually, if you're not paying close attention, you get really confused in the action. Now, this is beautiful. You see that sweeping shot? That's on a track, and that's a truck shot, a truck's pan. We'll talk more about that. But like this, that's a Steadicam. That's handheld. It's on a stick. And we'll talk about that as well. So really what we're going to be showing you from here is going to be dolly and truck shots as well as Steadicam shots. Now look at how much movement is not just in the camera, but also in the edit. I mean, frames are happening. I mean, like these shots are lasting for frames long, not even seconds. I mean, if you're not paying close attention, this is a very specific style of making a film. I mean, cutting this together is wild, I'm sure. All right, and this is a nice Steadicam. All of this is Steadicam, so it's handheld with a harness. All right. Now, the cool thing about Steadicam is that it's actually you can move around a lot, but I will tell you, I've used a Steadicam before, and it is murder on the lower back. I'll tell you, because you have a whole harness, then you have an arm that sticks out, and it attaches to a pole that at the top of the pole is the camera, and at the bottom of the pole is weights, and it's on springs, so it supports the weight of the camera on your body, because it's attached to this like metal harness thing, and you can see an example right here. The good thing is if you have a experienced user of this kind of shot, this isn't something that you can just pick up. Honestly, working with Steadicam is delicate a lot of times because your body is supporting the weight of it all, and you got an arm, you got a hand that's holding onto the arm so it doesn't fly away and makes you fall over, and then the stick that's supporting the camera, it's not touching the ground, it's floating, and you're usually using 2 or 3 fingers to move it or to pan it. You're being very gentle while also at times running, you know what I mean? And it's very easy for you to accidentally just move it, and keep like a horizon flat on a Steadicam is very hard to do, almost impossible when you first pick it up. But once you get good at it or get comfortable, they're really fun to use. And back in the day, not so much today with technology changing, but back in the day, if you had a Steadicam and a production hired you to work Steadicam, like I'm sure they did for the day, you'd be bringing in about probably close to $6,000 for that day. So it used to pay really well. Now with technology, they have equipment that does all the work for you, so it's a little bit less. But it's been around for a long time, and it's a beautiful shot because it allows you to move around. Like, notice they don't have a whole lot of equipment next to him or whatever. It's because they're like, we just need a microphone and we need the Steadicam operator, and that's basically it, because they have free range to move around the scene as they want. So that's the second one I want to talk about. And then the other one I want to talk about is the truck shot. Now, we saw it a lot. We saw, let me go to this picture. We saw them running through the forest, and how they got that is like to get that side profile of them running and staying with them. Some people use cars, and they're on the side of cars and they're following the action through like the forest or whatever. the best way to do it is to have these machines with their tracks, because it's going to give you the smoothest shot possible without all of the jolts and all the shaking. Now, I know during that running scene, they used a lot of Steadicam that was jolting and moving around. But if you notice those wide sweeping shots, they were very smooth and they moved very fast. That's because of the effectiveness of having a truck dolly that's built for that kind of operation. Now, I'm sure they also had to come in and flatten out this ground, so they have, right next to the woods, they have a nice smooth ground to work on. But this is just, I think it's a really cool production shot. Notice if it's side to side, the camera movement, then it's a truck shot. If it's pushing in or pulling out, but it's still on a track, that's a dolly. So a lot of people say dolly when they're talking about side to side. We all know what you're talking about, but technically, correctly, it's called a truck. You truck side to side, you dolly forward and backwards. And so we saw beautiful shots of trucking, and we saw really, really interesting and some very beautiful Steadicam shots from that sequence as well. I want to now go to the last clip we're going to watch, and I kind of explained dollying. It's basically the same as a truck, but the thing is about dollying is I found a scene or I found a production shot rather, where they set up a really short dolly track just to do a very small push in, right? But I noticed when I watched the clip, the push in never happened. So from what I would guess is they actually set up the track and didn't end up using it. They just used it like a tripod. But let's go ahead and watch the scene. It's the close-up of Harry Potter, and you'll see it. Actually, I'll show it to you right now. If you look on the ground, you see they're on a track that's moving towards Harry, or moving towards, I guess, Daniel, and he's standing in the middle of the track. And that means they're going to do a slow push-in on him. And you got the light source coming from the opposite side from where this picture was taken. And yeah, so this is basically the scene. Now let's watch what the final cut of it was. So Hermione enters the tent, and you have Ron and Harry. It is a good, well-established 180-degree rule. She walked through the line, and now they kind of establish a new line. But notice when she cut the line, the cuts that are happening, they kind of break the 180-degree rule a good bit in this scene. Because see where her eye line is, she's looking to the left of the screen facing us. Now he's also looking to the left of the screen, so they framed them up similarly. So they're kind of breaking that 180-degree rule, and I don't know for what purpose. Maybe it could be that motivated lighting. Maybe they wanted to shoot shadow side, but they chose not to shoot shadow side on her. So I'm not really sure why they chose to break this. Maybe the space was too small. Now this is the frame that we saw that dolly, that production picture. Wait till it flips around. There's the close-up on Daniel that we saw in the picture. Notice his shot, that close-up that's set up for a dolly, they never used it. Just stayed stagnant. So, yeah, that's basically it. I wanted to just point that out because I think it's nice to realize even in production, you're never going to get it right. I would say probably 80% of production is troubleshooting, and you can minimize it down to 80-70% of troubles that you have to figure out on the fly by good pre-planning. But if you come into a film ill-prepared, well then basically 95 to 100% of your production on set is going to be troubleshooting. I know even for small projects that's the case. So I'm sure it's a good reminder that even the big professionals with all of their people and all of their planning and all of their hard work and even money that they paid someone to bring that track in and lay it down before the DP got there, even that's money wasted on something they don't even use, you know? And so it's a part of the process. It's an art form, it's trial and error, and it's just a good reminder that even even the professionals still struggle at times with knowing, well, not understanding it entirely. So that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this, I go into detail. You've heard me talking about the 180-degree rule. I go into detail on one of my other videos, as well as basic composition framing and motivated lighting. So if you're interested in that, go check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel. We're glad you're here. I'll see you in the next video.
Welcome back. I'm glad you clicked on the video. We're going to be talking today a little bit about the Chosen One. Not just the Chosen One from Harry Potter. We're going to be using Harry Potter as sort of the template to be talking about this story idea. But the Chosen One sort of as a whole, as a story trope, as a way to carry your characters through the world and have them interact with each other, have them interact with the villains, the heroes, everything. And so we're just going to be exploring this idea. We're going to be exploring the idea of how Harry Potter is actually, in my opinion, a good example of a good Chosen One story. We often get on, I watch a lot of videos about stories and about writing, and you hear a lot about the Chosen One trope, and often in a negative sense they refer to Harry Potter. But I want to go through here and kind of explain why, number one, Harry Potter is used as the number one Chosen One archetype, but also why it's a good Chosen One story. And we're just going to explore that. And first, we're going to just do a brief. I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible. We're going to be doing a brief overview of the prophecy itself, because every Chosen One story usually starts with some sort of prophecy, whether it just be by oral tradition or whether it be a recorded prophecy or something that somebody's written down. So real quick, we're gonna get into the prophecy a little bit. Try to do this kind of quickly. So first, we have a little bit of backstory. They don't explain this in the books. Dumbledore meets with Sybil Trelawney. You can see Sybil in this picture in the ball. This is from the movies, where they meet. She's looking for a teaching position. Dumbledore isn't sure. He's only interviewing her because of her connection with an ancestor of hers who was a great seer, had a lot of accurate prophecies and whatnot. And towards the end of their interview, Dumbledore is, he's leaning in a different direction. He's not going to go with Trelawney. And then as he's leaving, she starts in a prophetic voice, giving a prophecy, unbeknownst to her. She doesn't know that she's doing this, and he records it. Now, the prophecy says that the one with the power to defeat the Dark Lord is coming. That they're approaching. I believe the exact words, that they're going to be born to people that have defied the Dark Lord thrice, that they're going to be born at the end of the 7th month, so July, and they're going to have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, and that I looked through this earlier, and I'm losing it now. And that he'll have powers unbeknownst to the Dark Lord, and neither can live while the other survives. So that's sort of the prophecy, and so just a little bit about the history. The prophecy doesn't actually work unless circumstances are correct. So there's a little bit of a philosophical debate about fate and destiny and whatnot. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that later, but this prophecy doesn't actually can't actually work unless the circumstances were right. So at this particular moment, not professor at this time, just Severus Snape, who was a Death Eater at this time, was listening to this interview. He was hoping to also have an interview with Dumbledore for the position of Defense Against the Dark Arts. But he heard the interview, but he only heard part of it, and he went and he told Lord Voldemort, and only hearing part of it about who the baby would be born to, he'd have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord, and he'd be born at the end of July. So Voldemort, being the person he is, kind of rash and making his own decisions, picked out who it was. There was sort of two options, and the options being Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom. Voldemort chooses Harry Potter. The motives for that aren't entirely clear. I've done a little bit of research in that. Why he chose Harry's parents, why he chose Harry specifically, isn't super clear. I did a little bit of reading, and they said that, perhaps it was because he offered for Lily and James to join him, and they refused. But both Harry's parents and Neville's parents defied him 3 times. Both these children were born at the end of July, and ultimately he chooses Harry. Now, the issue with that is, only knowing part of the prophecy, he fulfilled the prophecy by marking his enemy, and he marks Harry here in this photo. He's got the little scar on his head where Voldemort tried to kill him. He marks his enemy as his equal. Unbeknownst to Voldemort, gives him the power to destroy himself, not just here, but later on in the story. And so we get a little bit of interesting stuff about prophecy, in that it's going to be fulfilled, but the person fulfilling it doesn't necessarily, when you don't have all the information, you don't know how it works. And so here I've got a picture. Here's Harry and Neville. I like this picture. It's just real clear of them two together, and you can see the differences. But Voldemort chose Harry. He could have easily chose Neville, but he didn't. And it makes you wonder, where would Neville have been if the prophecy had been about? If Voldemort had marked him, if he had killed his parents, where would Harry have been? So we get a little bit of that. But moving on, now that we sort of know the prophecy, we know it's about Harry, we know it's about Voldemort, and it's only about Harry now because Voldemort made it about Harry. I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of common tropes that we see. We're going to talk a little bit about the Chosen One trope before we move on to a little bit more of Harry Potter. And here in this picture, this sort of collage, we've got a couple different Chosen One faces that you guys might recognize. You got Harry Potter, of course, the standard. You've got Luke Skywalker. You've got Aragorn and Paul Atreides. Now, the reason I chose Luke over Anakin is because ultimately it's Luke's decision to defy the Emperor and not side with the Emperor that leads to them being destroyed. So, while Anakin was thought to be the chosen one, and there's debate, we can debate about it, but I chose Luke because that was sort of the original chosen one for the story. And Aragorn represents sort of a different chosen one theme, and that's the Return of the King. It's in the title of one of the movies and one of the books. The Return of the King trope is often a chosen one story in that, the king is lost, the heir of the king is lost. He's going to come back. He's going to destroy the bad guy, or he's going to reclaim his kingdom. And then, of course, I picked Paul Atreides. Dune's really hot right now. But also, Paul represents another sort of chosen one story of when the chosen one appears, that they'll be able to sort of save the people that have been imprisoned, or they've been persecuted. Paul's story actually lines up with Harry's a little bit in that the prophecy is sort of self-fulfilling. His prophecy happens more of because of things that the religion that the Bene Gesserit have set up, and he fits the prophecy because they made it so. And so that's just sort of some basic chosen one stuff. Now, the reason Harry Potter is different, the reason it feels similar but isn't like other chosen one stories that you may know of, the prophecy says this person will defeat the villain and everything's going to be great. We see that in Narnia, for example. That's a good sort of chosen one prophecy as well. That's about multiple people. Harry Potter is different because the prophecy doesn't really say that Harry's going to defeat the Dark Lord, the villain. It says that he will have power to destroy him. He will have the power to vanquish him. The Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. But circumstances don't say who the chosen one's going to be exactly. That is determined by Voldemort. And so the prophecy is a lot different. And the fulfilling of the prophecy essentially happens. It happens when Voldemort marks Harry. It's sort of implied that the prophecy is going to continue to the latter part, which is neither can live while the other survives. And even that isn't super clear. So it's not one of those cut and dry prophecies that we get in a lot of movies. Even in Star Wars, they break away from it as well in the prequel trilogy, where Anakin is supposed to destroy the Sith. He's not supposed to become one. He's not supposed to destroy the Jedi. But Harry Potter sort of breaks away from the traditional chosen one archetype. It feels very much like what you would think it is. It feels very much like, and in the movies they don't do it as much justice as they do in the books. But it feels like your traditional chosen one story. But it's not, because circumstances change everything about Harry's life and Voldemort. So we're going to talk just briefly about Harry's childhood. Growing up with the Dursleys, and I have in this photo just a nice picture, just I think a really great picture of them all together. Growing up with the Dursleys and, being safe for the first 10, 11 years of his life, changes who Harry is, changes who he's going to be. He doesn't get to grow up in the wizard world. He sort of has to learn to be under the radar, pass without being seen, get used to abuse, essentially, and being ignored and being pushed aside for somebody else, somebody that the parents see as better, and that's Dudley. Little side note here. This isn't, this doesn't pertain to much. But I learned recently, since I've been reading the books, that there's a very heartfelt moment that they don't show in the movies between Harry and Dudley, where they're separating, they're going different paths. The Dursleys have to go into hiding. Harry has to go with the Weasleys and eventually defeat Voldemort. And Dudley says, he's confused. He's like, Harry's not coming with us. He's not coming with us. Where's he gonna go? And then he says something really nice, like, their dad says, who cares where he's gonna go? It doesn't matter. And Dudley says something like, it matters to me. And I don't know. It was a great moment in the book that I think would have been really, really nice on screen that we didn't get to see. But moving on further into his, transition into school, his circumstances continue to change in that now everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows that he's the boy who lived. They don't know that he's the chosen one yet. They just know that he's the boy who lived. He's the boy that Voldemort tried to kill, and that Voldemort was destroyed in the act of trying to kill him. The attention that he gets is pivotal. It's really important in that if Harry had grown up in the wizarding community, Dumbledore predicts that he wouldn't have been the same kind of person. For good or ill, Dumbledore went with the safest route, and that was for him to be with his family, where he had an added layer of protection, being with a blood relative, but also to, keep him away from the constant attention that he would get his entire young life in his formative years. But the attention he gets from Hogwarts is varying, it's stressful, and Harry has to deal with it every year, and it switches between everybody likes Harry, everybody doesn't like Harry. He's always sort of the center of positive or negative attention, and how Harry deals with it compounds a little bit of what we're going to add later into his motivation. He didn't want this. He's never wanted this attention. Even, it's a stark contrast going from a place where he had no attention to a place where he has all the attention, all the eyes are on him constantly, scrutinizing every little move he makes. And so it changes him and rounds him out as a character. He gets very angry at points. He gets very emotional. But all of this is super pivotal to who he's going to become. And by the time he actually learns the prophecy and Dumbledore sort of explains everything about it and explains that he's not going to be able to survive while Voldemort lives, and vice versa, Harry's sort of already established who he is, what his motivations are. Now, what that means for the characters, all characters moving forward, the fact that the prophecy isn't a super concrete thing, that it's not written in stone what's going to happen. We don't know if Harry is going to, Harry could have become evil. He could have died. Voldemort may have never come back. And, he may have never, gained all his strength and just remained in limbo for the rest of however long he would live. And so, but that's also important for your side characters, Hermione and Ron, or supporting characters rather, Dumbledore, the entire Order of the Phoenix, in that there is still a point. There's still there's still a driving force for them to fight. A lot of times, prophecy stories and chosen one stories give you this idea that there's no reason for the villains to try to kill the Chosen One. There's no reason for the heroes who aren't the Chosen One to fight back, because there's a prophecy. It says what's gonna happen. But it's really important, the decisions that Harry makes and who he is and his motivations and the kind of person he grew into. And after losing Sirius and after losing Dumbledore, eventually he decides that, he's been struggling with the idea that he's going to have to die, or Voldemort is going to have to die. He decides firmly and concretely, the prophecy says that one of them's got to live, and it's got to be him. And he has the motivation, and he has, the willpower to do so. Now, the issue on Voldemort's end is the decisions he makes also contribute to the prophecy. His motivations are different from Harry's, but they're very powerful motivators as well. We sort of move a little bit away from the movies here. Kind of going to get talking a little bit about the books, because they give us more of Voldemort and Tom Riddle's personality and why he is the way he is. You guys may be curious as to why the Horcruxes, why the specific Horcruxes that he chose, that he picked. And they give us a little insight into his psychology when Dumbledore goes to pick him up from the orphanage. And Dumbledore recognizes immediately what kind of person Tom Riddle is. And moving into Hogwarts, the other teachers and the other kids don't realize what kind of person he is because he hides it behind a mask. But because Dumbledore saw the type of child he was, he got sort of an overview of what kind of person he would become. Tom Riddle's he likes to use his power to control people. He doesn't have friends because he doesn't want friends. He doesn't, he doesn't like people. He's very independent. And even as Lord Voldemort, the Death Eaters aren't his friends. The people he meets at Hogwarts as a youth aren't his friends. These are people that make him more powerful and that he can use. He also collects things that he wins or that he wants or are personable to him. And Dumbledore takes note of that. So when he decides to create the Horcruxes, he chooses items that he himself identifies as important to him. So Hogwarts is a very important place to Voldemort. So he chooses the cup is the Hufflepuff cup. It was from the person who founded Hufflepuff. The necklace is Ravenclaw's. The locket is Slytherin's. And I don't believe he ever got anything from Gryffindor. But he chooses things that are potentially powerful. The ring, Marvolo's ring, was, passed down through his family and things like that, things that are important to him. And he gathers these things to himself. And ultimately, the ability not to be able to change, not to be able to do these things that he's always done is what gets him in trouble. And it's what gets killers in real life in trouble. The ability to serial killers have to do specific things every time. They have to follow a pattern. And he has a specific pattern that he has to follow. Now, how that relates to the prophecy, when he's told about Harry, when he's told about Neville, he makes a decision for himself. what to do. He chooses the people, he chooses the baby, and then he goes after them on information that is half-baked. But because he is who he is, and because he can't change and he won't change, is the reason that he ultimately fails. Now, sort of wrapping up this idea of the Chosen One story, I just want to talk a little bit about, we've talked about it in the past, is motivations. Motivations drive a character to do what they're going to do. And in Harry Potter, motivations of the characters oftentimes subvert the prophecy. Things that Harry does don't line up with what he's planning on doing or what he's supposed to do. If he plans on running away, that doesn't add anything to the prophecy, because the prophecy says that neither one can live while the other survives. So that means that he can't truly live. He can't truly have a life. All his life, essentially, he's just been surviving. He survived at the Dursleys because of the familial protection. He survived in Hogwarts, barely, from year to year. And Voldemort's sort of done the same thing. He's survived. He's gained power, and then eventually loses all his power and continues just that grind of trying to survive. And so what these characters do is going to decide what happens with the prophecy. Because like I said earlier, the prophecy doesn't say who's going to win. It just says essentially that they're equal. But the important part about these motivations is that Voldemort chooses his enemy. His motivations, the kind of person he is, he chooses, sort of unknowingly, his enemy. And he creates circumstances that could lead to his downfall. But ultimately, I picked this picture because it's very sweet. And it's sort of nostalgic. It really shows the relationship that Dumbledore and Harry have going back to the beginning. Voldemort chose his enemy, but Dumbledore created the circumstances for Harry to have the right motivations. If he didn't, Harry would have had the wrong motivations. Very, depending on what happens, how he grew up, they could be very selfish motivations. They could be very surface level motivations that wouldn't get him very far. They could be anywhere, between here or there. But ultimately, Dumbledore puts him in an environment where he's safe. Then he puts him in an environment where he can create solid friendships, solid motivation, love for others, hardship, and he can know, he tells him that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. And then later revises it to those who deserve it. And so he creates the kind of atmosphere where Harry can become the person who would deserve help, who would deserve the people around him, and not be somebody that's surface level, somebody who's shallow, who doesn't know what they want and doesn't have the right drive. That's what defeats Voldemort. And that's why I feel like Harry Potter is a unique Chosen One story in that, number one, the prophecy doesn't tell you who's going to win. But number two, motivation of characters drives what's going to happen. It drives, ultimately, it sort of subverts the prophecy and tells us that it doesn't really matter what the prophecy said. The person who's going to win is the person who has the strongest motivations. And Dumbledore says that love is the strongest magic. It's the strongest force in the universe. And that's a good lesson. That's a good motivation, I think, to have. But that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. That's what I wanted to get into. A lot of these, things that I say, some of them are just my opinions. But, that's good to have an opinion. And I'd like to hear yours. I'd love to hear your opinions. I'd love for you guys to check out the other videos in this series. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think there's a better Chosen One story. Tell me what you think about Chosen One stories overall. And thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Check out the podcast channel. Check out the studio channel. Like and subscribe. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you later. Whew. Man, you need a chair, my man.
I need a chair.
Yeah, get in here.
I'm getting in here. Wow.
All right, make sure
that information about Neville, didn't know it.
You didn't know that?
Didn't know it.
Yeah, Neville easily could have been the Chosen One.
Didn't know that. And
Yeah.
it makes so much sense that he's the one that kills one of the Horcruxes, the snake.
Yeah, he does.
Wild, man.
Neville has some serious motivation as well. Because, in the movies, his parents are dead. In the books, they're not. His parents are insane because they were both put so heavily under the Cruciato curse that they went insane. So he's got really a sad, tragic story.
Yeah.
That they're there.
Just like Harry.
But they're not there. Yeah, it's really sad. And his grandmother doesn't believe in him as a wizard. She doesn't. She's always comparing, saying his father would be able to.
He shows up all insecure.
Yeah.
With his teeth.
With his teeth. But man, he gains some confidence.
He does.
Going towards the, into
That
the
scene,
last movie.
I know we're comparing story characters, which is always better from the source material, books. But the way they filmed it in the movie, where he's like jumping midair and
slicing the snake,
it's very well done.
It's an epic scene.
Epic.
I really like
especially his character.
Yeah, in the books you see a lot how Neville goes from being just like useless, absolutely useless, to, following Harry into the Ministry to save Sirius, who's not there.
Yeah,
and retrieve the prophecy. And in the book, it was Neville who broke the prophecy, and they never got to hear it. But fortunately, Dumbledore heard it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the Chosen One trope. But as with all tropes, as with all story devices, you have to. It's almost better when you start writing to put the tropes in your story, put them in, but make them unique. Make them important to the story.
Yeah.
If you guys are familiar with Terry Pratchett, I've talked about Terry Pratchett with you. He does this wonderful thing of taking prophecies and taking Chosen One ideas and stories and making them so completely and utterly insane and unique and things like that. And sometimes you gotta reread because you don't understand what happened.
He just said what?
But in yours, I saw that dolly, and I did want to point something out.
Yeah.
That perhaps they used it at a different point. Did they ever use it at a different point in that scene?
I don't think so, because they only cut to that close-up, that specific close-up. I think they used it. It was the same framing. They used it for a close-up talking to Ron and Hermione, and Ron talking to Hermione with Ron behind him.
They did.
But it was the same.
They didn't when Hermione when she came into the tent. They didn't like back it up a little bit and pan or anything.
No, it was in a weird place. It's possible, honestly. You can't really know for sure. It's just it's interesting that. You could be completely right.
I'm just pointing out,
and I'm just
things.
saying, I don't know. I have to rewatch it.
But it is very funny to look at that picture and be like, we got 4 feet of space. We're putting a dolly right here,
and then you don't even really notice it in the scene. Like it's kind of pointless.
Yeah,
it feels like that whole scene, everything is on sticks.
But also, that scene is when I saw the picture, I thought it was a different scene. I thought it was excuse me, I thought it was a much more serious scene
Mm-hmm.
where that pan in on his face would make sense.
But it was just Ron with a silly vote.
But yeah, Ron and Hermione are sort of at odds. They're at each other's throats right now.
Yeah.
And Ron's trying to be cordial but kind of dismissive to what they were talking about. And he's trying to support her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't really make much sense for them to do like a hard pan. You know?
And that's probably what came down to with the cut. They were probably like, I don't know, maybe we're going to have Harry look at Hermione in a concerned, or Ron in a concerned way when like Hermione is just annoyed and walks away. And maybe you could do a little push in on Harry's face as he's kind of looking at Ron.
He looks over at Ron.
Just a little curious, just like, oh no, we've messed up now. But
even that, even that doesn't really feel right if you think about it in your head for that kind of moment.
The thing is, though, like until you get it in the edit, sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, sometimes and of course I'm sure they filmed that scene a couple times.
I'm sure they might have got. I'm sure they got the dolly shot.
The dolly shot.
They just didn't use it,
and they were looking at the footage and they were like, "All right, we'll just go with the still."
Yeah.
It's
just fun. I think it's just cool to be reminded that. Not everyone gets it perfect.
But, it's better to be prepared. Yeah. It's better to be prepared and not, have what you need.
They chose not to have it. Yeah, they chose not to have it. They had it and they chose not to. Instead of saying, I wish we had it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But I was excited when I saw that picture of Hermione in the forest with a Steadicam operator. And I was like, I got to find that scene. Dude, I want to look at it.
I'm telling you, that scene, that picture with the spider with Aragog, I didn't know that was practical effects.
It was real.
But the crazy part is he's practical. The background is fake.
And
I love
Hagrid
and
is
Hagrid,
added later.
Of course, Hagrid's fake, but I love that the background is fake. You don't think about that kind of stuff.
You got to.
You
can't
really
build
don't think
a background
about that
like
kind of stuff in,
I think it would be fun to do maybe for next week. I might try this. I might say real or fake and have production shots of saying, is this green screen or is this real? Is this CGI?
Ooh, I'd
or
love
is this
that.
practical? Yeah,
that would be really fun. Especially in Harry Potter where they mix the two so much. I don't know that I've seen another production that mixes
I would say Game of Thrones did it.
Okay, yeah.
Game of Thrones did it about the same amount.
Yeah.
They used a lot of practicals and CGI all over the place. But for their time, like Lord of the Rings didn't use as much mixing of the two.
Oh, man, I was
They did a lot, but maybe not as much as Harry Potter.
I was watching some behind-the-scenes footage from Goblet of Fire, and they're filming through a tank, and they're like, all right, Daniel, you're going to take a deep breath of the oxygen, and then you're going to act out the scene. You're going to take the oxygen out of your mouth, and you're going to act out the scene. And he's swimming in water, people around him. And it's like 3, 2, 1, go. He takes the oxygen out, and he does the scene underwater. They get it, and then they're like, all right, oxygen back in. I was like, they did that.
Yeah.
Underwater. That's very crazy. Cool. Or when you see him and Robbie Pat running through the maze, and they're just blowing tons and tons of debris and wind at them. Man, I love the behind the scenes footage.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And I think that would be fun for next week.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for us.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this wacky and wonderful show. Episode 3. We're glad you're here. If you're following along, I know it's still pretty early and you might be a fan of the podcast and you might be listening to us, but if that's the case, we're glad you're here. We love you.
Yeah, thank you.
Same way that Ron loves having fights with Hermione.
Yeah. It's a theme.
It's a theme.
It's a theme in the book, big time.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next week, guys. We love you.